Hello fellow word lovers, welcome back to Pocket of Poetry. My name is Olivia, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer from the perspective of someone who has never read Twilight before. Before I start the review, I do just want to address, yes, I did chop off all of my hair yesterday. Do I regret it? Maybe, but here we are, and here it is. So if you don't know, Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer is the recent addition to the Twilight series. It is the first book in the series told from the perspective of Edward Cullen. So I haven't ever read the Twilight series, it is true, nor have I watched the movies. I know, crazy. When I was young, I wasn't really into being mainstream. I didn't like to or participate in all the things that everybody was obsessed with because I was annoying that way. When I was 16, I read about half of the first Twilight book, and I stopped reading it at the scene where he comes out into the sun and sparkles because I thought that scene was way too cheesy, and I was like, no, can't do it anymore, and I stopped reading, which is so funny looking back on it because I don't know, I might as well have just kept reading it, but I was interesting back then. So when I found out that there was a book from the perspective of Edward, I was instantly intrigued because I would much prefer to hear the story from the perspective of the 100-year-old vampire who's lived a really interesting long life than the whiny, boring 17-year-old girl. So my expectations going into this book is what I'm going to talk about first. I expected it to be dramatic. I expected it to be angsty. In it for having a fun time. I really just wanted to immerse myself in a really cheesy vampire romance. That was what I wanted. I wanted the drama, and I had actually listened to a small sample of the audiobook because it was on YouTube for a short time. Anyway, I listened to a small sample of it and I was kind of hooked by the writing style. I really liked how moody and broody Edward was. So I decided that I wanted to read it. And so yes, like I said, my expectations going in, they weren't super high. I expected to have a fun time. I expected it to be interesting. But I definitely was thinking of it as more of a cheesy, over-the-top dramatic read. Ironically, however, I ended up finding in it a lot more than that, and I ended up enjoying it and liking it a lot more than I thought I would. So for the first half of the book, I was, kind of getting what I initially expected. There was that drama, there was that angst, there were all those steamy high school scenes where they're weirdly attracted to each other and yet repulsed by each other, you know what I'm talking about. So for the first half of the book, I was basically just getting what I expected. But around the halfway point, I started to really enjoy it on a deeper level. And the ironic part is the scene that really sold me, the scene that really got me invested fully in this book was actually the sparkle scene. The scene where he goes out and shows her what he is in the sun for the first time. So I don't know if this is considered spoilers because I think most people already know what happens in Twilight, so I don't feel like it's really a spoiler to talk about it. But basically in this scene, Edward is with Bella, right? And he's telling her all about his vampirish ways. And throughout the book, there are a lot of internal battles that they go into great detail describing Edward's internal battles and struggles against his nature and his more base instincts of wanting to, her blood, battling with his other feelings for her, his higher feelings for her, that he loves her, that he wants to protect her, keep her safe. So throughout the whole book, there's this constant struggle going on. And he's afraid. Up until this point, he's afraid that he's going to harm her in some way. And he's afraid to be near her because he's afraid he's going to hurt her. And during this scene, there's a part where he kind of finally confronts his fears, confronts his true nature, confronts what he is most afraid of about himself, the demons within himself. And he kind of comes off conqueror in the end of this scene, and he overcomes, not completely, but he overcomes basically his basic desire to eat her, drink her blood, whatever. So I just wanted to really quickly read a portion of this part because when I read this part, this was when I first really was like, whoa, this book is kind of blowing my mind. I don't know, I'll just read it, and then I'll tell you what I think after. It says, I thought I understood a little better what had happened to me before, in the violent reaction that had terrified us both. I had been so convinced that I might be overwhelmed that when I actually was overwhelmed, it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. My anxiety, The agonizing visions I'd obsessed over, plus the months of self-doubt that had shaken my former confidence, all combined to weaken the determination that I now knew was absolutely up to the job of protecting Bella. So at this point, he realizes he can protect her. He's 100% capable of doing it. He confronts his fear that he wouldn't be able to do it, and he finds out that he can. And I just found that whole part to be like very inspiring, and like honestly I was just like, wow, this book is making me realize things that I never realized before. Like just the way that he was able to overcome himself, and the way that his motivation and his love for her was enough to carry him over that. And I just think that that's like such a beautiful love story. Like it really is. And just the way that he is able to overcome his desire for her blood, and his desire for her is overcome by his desire for her blood. Like I just think it's so beautiful. As cheesy as it is, as cliche as it is, as old as it is, I don't know. I kind of, at that point I was kind of sold. Like up to that point I was like, you know, it's cheesy. I'm interested, I'm hooked, but it's cheesy. And then I got to that part and I was like, this is kind of a beautiful story. Like, I don't know. Edward, I don't know. So the next like point that I wanted to bring up in this review is about Edward Cullen himself as a character. A lot of people love to hate him. He's kind of controversial. I've seen a lot of videos and like things on the internet talking about how he's actually toxic and abusive, and talking about how, you know, he's obsessive, and like a bunch of things about their relationship are red flags, which is definitely true. I mean, he does climb in her window at night and watch her sleep. Like there are a lot of things that, you know, aren't normal behavior, but then again, he is a vampire, so it's like he's not going to do normal things. One thing that I did notice in this book, and I think it was on purpose, because I think Stephanie Meyer was kind of trying to overcorrect that perception of Edward as kind of being abusive and toxic. So she was really laying it on thick in certain parts with like, oh, it felt so unchivalrous to do this. Like she used the word chivalrous multiple times in regards to like Edward's thoughts, that he was like thinking that he didn't feel chivalrous, and she made him seem very, very gentlemanly. Like, while yes, he is full of angst and he has that like kind of roughness to him, he's also just like a gentleman. Like he can read people's thoughts, and yet he chooses to like stay away from certain situations and certain people and certain things. And I don't know, she just made him seem like really gentlemanly and really sweet. When at certain parts I was like, okay, yeah, it's a little obvious what you're doing here. You're trying to like overcorrect that whole perception of Edward as being a creep. But if I'm being honest, it worked. It really did. I thought it worked well. I mean, yeah, it was a little overdone at times, but I definitely thought that she managed to make him a very likable character, and she managed to make him very attractive, honestly. Like, I was kind of in love with Edward, I'm not gonna lie. So, another thing that I absolutely loved about this book was all of the background, like all the backstories that we got about Edward, about his family, about the Cullen family, how he became a vampire, how all of his family members became vampires. I don't know if all that stuff is covered. I think it's covered briefly in the other books, but I don't think it's gone into as much depth as it is in Midnight Sun. Like, they go into a lot of depth on how all of them became vampires, what their backstories are, and it also talks a little bit about like Edward's time when he wasn't living as like a peaceful vampire, and when he was taking people's lives. He was taking the lives of criminals to like bring them to justice and stuff. So it goes into that a lot. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was actually so hooked during those parts of the story. I was just wanting to find out more about like their background and like their vampire world and like how all of that stuff worked. First half of the book wasn't amazing. Like, it definitely gives you good background and good backstory, but pretty much from the second half of the book onward was when I started to really enjoy it and really feel like I was honestly like learning things from it. Like, it touched me to my core. Okay, this romance, this love, Edward's love for Bella, it was really sweet. Like, just the way that it was described, honestly, really, really sweet. So I just wanted to end this review by reading one more quote from the book. This quote is during a flashback Edward is having, thinking about when he first became a vampire, and he was with Carlisle, his father, his vampire father, and they were traveling and they ran into another group of vampires. Edward's power, right, he can read minds. So, and he reads the mind of this other vampire, and she's thinking about Edward. She's thinking, poor boy, how tragic to be deprived of the greatest joy of this life. And when she says the greatest joys of this life, she's talking about blood, human blood. And for sure then why blood wasn't the existence-crowning ecstasy that this other vampire had believed it to be, why I continued to miss Carlisle and Esme more than I enjoyed my freedom, why the weight of each kill seemed to accumulate until I was crippled under their combined load. Over the years after my return to Carlisle and Esme, as I struggled to relearn all the discipline I'd abandoned, I came to the conclusion that this other vampire might not know anything greater than the call of blood, but I had been born to something better. And when I read that quote, I was just like, wow, that's so inspiring. Like, just the whole story, I feel like it can be a metaphor for life. You know, I feel like it can be a metaphor for some people choose to just seek pleasure, go with their instincts, and some people feel like they're born to something better. And I just found that to be a really beautiful way to describe it. And I don't know, that was around the time when I became really attached to Edward's character, and I realized I actually quite like this book, quite like this character. So yeah, anyway, that was my review. Hopefully it wasn't too ranty and all over the place, but I would give this book a solid 4 stars. I really would. I enjoyed it a lot. The 1 star left off would just be because obviously there were moments where it was very cheesy and very overdone, and there were moments that I cringed a little bit. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and overall, I actually kind of want to read the rest of the Twilight books now. So maybe we'll see more videos about my thoughts on those books in the future. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this video a like if you did, and subscribe if you feel like it, but I'll see you next time.